From HPAC Magazine, this is Business Disruptors. I'm Doug Picklick, the editor of HPAC Magazine, and I've been noticing a lot of interesting things happening in the Canadian HVAC and plumbing market over the last few years. And the most important change, I think, is the way business leaders are adapting to changes in the market, bringing new approaches to the industry. Our first guest is doing just that. Stephen Lake is the CEO of Jetson Home, a well-financed startup based in North Vancouver, BC, that is designing, engineering, selling, installing, and servicing ducted cold climate heat pump systems. A graduate from the University of Waterloo, Stephen's already started and sold a high-tech wearables business, and now him and those colleagues have turned their focus to heat pumps, officially launching Jetson in 2024 with some seed money. And then earlier this year, Jetson raised an additional $50 million to grow and expand their business. So let's get on with my conversation with Stephen Lake. Hello, Stephen, and welcome to HPAC Magazine's Business Disruptors podcast. Stephen Lake is the CEO of Jetson, a Vancouver-based vertically integrated startup company in the HVAC home services space that launched in 2024. Jetson is on a mission to transform homes across North America by replacing fossil-fueled systems with electric heat pumps. Within a year of launching, the company has more than 1,000 heat pump systems operating in homes in Canada and the US. So again, Stephen, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Great. Thanks for having me on, Doug. Excited to chat about heat pumps and our model at Jetson.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Before Jetson, you were involved in another startup business with colleagues, I believe, from the University of Waterloo. I was hoping you could share a little background on yourself, just get us rolling.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I'm very much an outsider to the HVAC industry. I'm a mechatronics engineer by background. So that's what I studied in school. But I spent about 10 years after university working in a completely different space. So consumer electronics. Myself and some classmates had started a company that was initially called Thalmic Labs, later became North. North was one of the leading independent companies in the wearable space. So we had a eyeglasses device, or we developed a technology that put a laser scanning retinal display invisibly inside of a pair of prescription glasses. We spent many years developing that. We had a team of almost 500 people working on it. We built manufacturing facilities, opened up retail stores, began selling that first product that was basically a pair of prescription glasses that could give you, invisible to anybody else around you, a heads-up display floating 3 or 4 feet in front of you with turn-by-turn directions, text messages, context on the information or the places in front of you, all sorts of fun stuff. We, long story short, had built that business and we sold it to Google in 2020. That business and technology became Google's core bet for augmented reality, and so it kind of lives on there today, and a lot of the team is still there. Myself and the other founders left Google after that acquisition a couple years after. Even prior to that deal, I've been very interested in climate and trying to understand how we could apply our background and skill set around consumer experiences and sort of modernizing that interactions we have with technology, but apply that to really helping with the climate crisis we have now. And just over a period of years, really kept coming back to the home as this kind of underserved area that I think hasn't had the attention that it should have. I think as consumers, we think about electric vehicles as a really obvious thing, where we've now seen the rise of Tesla and a great momentum where every brand now has moved into EVs. It's very clear kind of the trains left the station that's happening. But many homeowners don't realize that your home is probably emitting about as much pollution as your car in the driveway. And that's an area that is kind of a frustrating one from an outside perspective, because we've actually had technology for decades to electrify that and do so very efficiently and with many other benefits. But in North America, the deployment of heat pumps, especially in residential, has been very low. Roughly 10% of homes versus 75% with a gas furnace. And it's this area we just kept coming back to, and we can dig more into it, but ultimately, decided to enter the space and try and move the needle on adoption and remove some of the barriers that are out there today to more homeowners making that choice to go for a clean all-electric system, and along the way bring a more modern technology forward approach to the home as well, in a category that I think hasn't yet had its sort of software is eating the world moment that we've had in so many other industries today.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, there's been a real push towards heat pumps in the last few years, with around decarbonization, electrification of homes, but it has been, somewhat slow to adopt. So, I mean, that was your, I guess, draw to the residential HVAC industry was more from the environmental side, right? The electrification side.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a key part of the electrification process that we need to undergo. Homes are a massive source of emissions. If you just look at overall energy use in the US, for example, and it's pretty similar in Canada, but roughly 22% of end energy use of all fuel types is going to residential use. And of that, about three quarters is heating. And so it nets out as about 15% of all energy from all types that we consume across the country are just heating and cooling homes. So it is one of the single biggest line items, like similar in magnitude to say passenger transport or other categories that are more obvious. So just a huge upside for sort of making that happen more quickly, the transition. And it's one that it's not just a environmental or benefit. It's actually just a better technology where we can save money, makes homes more comfortable. We have all these benefits of this modern electric approach, and
Yeah.
we just haven't had the level of deployment that I think it deserves right now.
Your business model is very different than the traditional HVAC contracting business. So maybe you can just tell us the story of where Jetson fits in the HVAC home services business, because it is unique.
Yes, it is a different model, and that's one of the things as we, came into the industry and really tried to tackle this problem of how do we make it an easy choice for homeowners to say yes to going to an all-electric heat pump system. Just what are the barriers in place? And that's where we started. And the barriers are actually pretty obvious. I think many folks in the industry will know. One, there's typically a big premium. So your cost of a cold climate central ducted heat pump system versus just putting in a furnace and an AC has typically been about a 2x premium. So something like $25,000 for a home versus 12 to 15 for a full high efficiency furnace and AC system. So you're almost double the cost. So off the bat, you're going to take most homeowners out of the equation right there, just on a cost basis. The second one is friction. The typical process today for a homeowner, there's a lot of friction, right? It's very kind of opaque process. How do I find a contractor that's trustworthy and is going to do a good job for me? Going through the whole process, having them come to my home and quote for kind of a custom project, dealing with permits and rebates and incentives, and does this X23 Platinum model, is it better than the plus option I'm being offered, and does it qualify for rebates? And it's just this very like complicated process. If you're used to as a homeowner, I go on like Amazon, I buy a product, and it's 2 clicks and it shows up tomorrow. Or if I bought a car recently from a Rivian or a Tesla, where I just go on the website and I can buy a car like that. I'm not going to a dealership. I'm not haggling over a price. It's just a completely different process than we're used to, I think, in most of home services today. And so we wanted to tackle both of those. How do we dramatically drive down the cost for homeowners and make this something that's affordable for your average single family home in the country and cost competitive with the fossil fuel option? So basically, how do we erase that green premium? That's kind of requirement one that we felt like we had to tackle. And the requirement two is how do we just modernize that process and make it more consistent with those other experiences that as consumers we expect in other parts of our lives today? Our background comes from consumer electronics, as mentioned. So if you think about how we build an iPhone today or another device, it's very much it's a mass production approach, right? You build millions of something, you standardize the process, you reduce waste, you minimize the steps involved, just sort of pretty basic things you think about in like a mass manufactured environment. And typically in home services today, we tend to treat each project in home as more of like a custom construction project, where I'm going to go and figure out what materials do I need, how do I figure out the right thing for this home, and sort of do this one-off approach. And what that means is just involves a lot more labor and inefficiency and waste and things like that. So we decided to focus on the model of how do we get to more like that mass production approach, so we can reliably come in to every home we're going to face and install that same or similar system in a repeatable way, reduce the labor time that goes into it, reduce the materials that are wasted, optimize the whole process to make that a nice, clean, single day process for homeowners that's very efficient to install. So that's one layer we work on. The second on the purchasing process, there's no reason we need to be in a home to quote on this. I think this is probably a unpopular opinion, let's say, in the industry where folks say, but every house is a bit different. I need to get there and see how I'm going to run the line set or how many feet of copper we need or what the layout of the panel is. The reality is if you design the process really well and invest in it up front, we can do all of that remotely, and or we can outfit our crews with the materials needed to account for that variability on site. And so we've moved to a fully online quoting process. We've invested a lot. We have a very large software engineering team. We built a extensive tool that lets us remotely analyze and simulate the heat load of any home that we're considering in a much more detailed way than you ever get from a normal on-site assessment. So we're looking at building footprints, local weather patterns over the entire year, building codes from the year of construction, any renovations they've done. We're modeling the entire building, full thermal load, automatic system design. We do all that remotely online. So we can basically go on our website in 2 minutes. We've designed a system for you, looked up your specific home. We take a few more details, over a call with that customer, if necessary, some photos and video. And then the whole system is designed with a firm upfront price. We don't need to visit the home. And then a week later, our in-house Jetson crews will show up in a single day process really efficiently, remove that gas furnace, disconnect the gas line, install the heat pump air handler, install the outdoor unit, run the electrical. And by the end of the day, we're running a really sophisticated software commissioning process, and that home is fully converted to all electric. So it's really this product of end-to-end control. We can just reduce waste and inefficiency from every layer of that normal process and make this something that we can just continue to drive the cost down for the homeowner and make it an easier and easier choice to make.
And it's
Yeah,
really
that's
a single source, right? I mean, you're making it, you're installing it, you're looking after it. I'm assuming after the installation as well.
we install our own equipment. So we have our Jetson Air heat pump system, which is a cold climate central ducted heat pump system. We've spent a lot of time engineering that system and really adding on that layer of technology and monitoring to it. So every system we install, we have full telematics streaming from that. So I can pull up here any one of the 1,000+ homes that we've installed here and drill down to 300 variables, from refrigerant temps and pressure to how it's operating right now to history and the modes it's in. Basically what you'd get on site plus a bunch more, but a detailed diagnostic. From that, we can also start offering a lot more value to the homeowner as well. So example there would be, how do we optimize that system to take advantage of time of use energy rates, for example? We have a full model of the home, of how it's the heat load of the home. We know the system's performing. We can very easily subtly shift that throughout the day to lower energy costs for you. Our system also monitors full indoor air quality. So that includes VOCs, particulate matter, CO2 levels, all of these things. And then from that, provide the feedback to the customer through our Jetson app, but also take actions like running filtration if there's high PM counts, like letting the customer to ventilate the house, things like that. So trying to bring much more of that productization to this category. Again, think of the difference on a traditional gas car versus an EV. It wasn't just like we replaced the gas motor and we put an electric battery in, it was all the same. At the same time, companies like Tesla and Rivian came in and rethought, how do I make the consumer experience better? Better software that makes it more of a pleasure to use the product, and smarter and more efficient. We think in the home, the same opportunity exists to make these systems much smarter, they can get more efficient over time, continue to have software updates over time, instead of the status quo in the industry, which is like, I put a metal box in your basement and for the next 10 or 15 years, it's just there. You don't know if it's performing. You don't know if it's lost efficiency, if the filter's dirty. You have no idea what's going on. It doesn't get better over time. With their Jetson systems, they're a connected smart system. We can monitor it. We'll have to know before the customer knows there's an issue. So if, let's say there's a refrigerant leak or something, we'll detect that before you even know there's an issue, and we can let the customer know and say, hey, we're going to have a technician drop by and address this issue so you don't have a bigger one down the road. So there's just so much potential value that can be delivered through that connected product. And we've invested a lot in that platform.
Wow. Okay. That is new. So you've developed your own ducted cold climate heat pump technology. And I understand, like, from 2-ton to 5-ton options, the smart thermostat, you've got the app, and you're actually installing it. Now, I know like traditional HVAC contracting, it's been a very relationship-based model for a century. From recent personal experience, that a furnace replacement that I had to make was kind of because of an emergency call, right? It was a gas furnace. Had a visit from a couple of local contractors, got some quotes, went with the guy that I liked the best, and it's a significant purchase, as you mentioned. It's like, over $10,000 or what have you, depending on what you're installing. So there is that level of trust involved. I'm just wondering, so how are you finding your typical customers for Jetson, and who is that typical customer that you found so far?
Yeah, it's a great question. On the one side of that, there's the local crews doing the work. So we have the benefit of, we exclusively do one line of work. We do heat pumps every single day, all day. We're installing dozens of them every day. And so that means we have local crews in every market we're in who are generally the most expert heat pump crews in those markets. So this is all they do. They're not doing a gas furnace now and a dual fuel and a Daikin unit and then whatever other brand tomorrow. They are installing this unit and they're highly, highly trained on that. So typically we're hiring experienced electricians and HVAC technicians. Then we're putting them through our Jetson University program to retrain them specifically on cold climate heat pump technology. So we end up with extremely high skill local crews doing the work in all of our areas. And then on the sort of pre-sale side, once you go through our online process and get that quote, you have an electrification advisor that gets assigned to you, and they'll reach out on the phone or video call and sort of have that conversation with you. And every customer generally goes through that conversation. It's not just go to the website, click and purchase. They typically have at least one, if not multiple conversations to answer all those questions. So there's, many of the misconceptions that exist out there, like do they work in the cold? And, just all the things I've heard heat pumps are going to cost more to operate when that's not true. And we help answer all those questions, make sure we're fully understood the context of that customer's home. We've got the right system spec for them and have some of that relationship building that would happen. Now, that is different than the traditional model. There's no upsell process. There's no good, better, best. There's a firm fixed price. It is what it is. And you can go and read the reviews. You can see what we're doing and try and move it from a little bit less of that relationship sale of I've come and sort of come to the kitchen table to convince you to go with my quote, and more of a you can do the research on us, you can read the reviews, you can see the product specs and make it more of a product purchase decision. Again, similar to how you might think of buying a car today. You're probably not buying a brand new EV because of a salesperson anymore. You've done your research, you've read the reviews, you've understood that it performs well. And we're trying to move heat pumps to a little more of that model where it's more about the service and the product and the company and the reputation that you're buying versus making it reliant on, that one great sales rep that you might have as a contractor who's very charming at the kitchen table, but that may not actually reflect on the quality of the product you get installed at the end of the day. So a little different process there. Your question on how we find customers, we almost exclusively market online. So in the markets we're in, we have very targeted advertising through traditional online channels. We have a little bit of offline marketing as well, but it's primarily paid marketing to establish our name, in those areas. Now that we've been in market a bit longer in these areas, we start to get, a steady state of referrals and some of the usual methods as well, which is very helpful, of course. And then folks see we've got these really futuristic all electric service vans that are, we've got 50 of them on the road now or so across our markets, and they're bright green. You can't miss them, all electric. And so people see those in the community. They see us doing the work. They hear from neighbors, and that all helps. But the primary method is really online focused marketing.
You mentioned your kind of streamlined approach and that no house visit required prior to specifying the products. And you shared a little bit of that. I was wondering if you could share a little bit more. You said, like, do people take photos of their gas bill and their home, their how many window to wall ratios, things like that? And then I'm assuming you have AI kind of working on your team looking at this stuff. Is that kind of how it works?
We do, yeah. So the typical process, you go on our website, jetsonhome.com, you enter your address. From the address, we look up a whole bunch of details from that property. So we look up the year your home was built, the footprint, the way it's facing, the square footage, the number of stories, all of these details. So we get an initial pretty detailed model of the home from that. We use that cross-reference with our own internal proprietary thermal engine, which also references building code, insulation values, similar homes in the area, et cetera, to build a thermal model that we find is highly accurate. And our process is it's closed loop. So as well as once we've installed these homes, we actually get real-time readings of the thermal loads from the home. So we can actually, it kind of confirms that our models were correct now on 1,000+ homes, which is very helpful. But we do that process automatically. We then ask some qualifying questions automatically to check which incentives or rebates you might qualify for. Those vary by area. So it may be who your gas utility is, your electric utility. It may be income levels if there's income-based rebates in your area. We ask all those questions so we can build out the full quote for you automatically. That basically all calculates, and a minute later or so, you get the full proposal from us on the heat pump system that's sized, includes all installation, all permits, everything, all electrical work is all included in there. And then once you see that preliminary quote, we ask the customer to submit a couple photos that help us confirm that. The main photos we're looking at is their electrical panel. We do a full electrical load calculation pre-sale on every home based on that, and also the conversation to confirm loads with the customer. And then their existing furnace system. And so from the existing furnace system, we can deduce the efficiency of the current equipment. We check for sizing and space, ductwork constraints, anything else we can measure from that. And for most homes, that's all we require. If it's any more of a unique scenario, let's say the clearances look a bit tight, something's not an obvious fit, then we may go to a second stage where we do a video call and we'll ask the homeowner to walk through and we'll confirm, for example, trunk measurements on the duct or some other, if there's anything out of the ordinary there. That's a relatively small percentage of homes. So the prototypical single family home is actually just from those initial couple of photos of the existing furnace, the electrical panel, we can do most of the preliminary work we need with that.
It's very good. And one of your selling points has been like a lower cost of entry for homeowners than some other, I think, heat pump options on the market. And you also feature a very connected system with this intelligence built in and the constant monitoring. So what are homeowners signing up for when they install a Jetson Home package? Are they buying the units outright, or are they subscribing to a service where you have a recurring revenue stream? How does that work?
Yeah, they're typically today an outright purchase. In some states and areas, there are financing programs in place, such as the Mass Save financing in Massachusetts, which is a 0% government program. There's some subsidized financing in Colorado. So there are some programs they may use to help finance that, but it's an outright purchase of the system typically. We do have an optional Jetson Care program that the vast majority of our customers do subscribe to. And so it's a 3-in-1, basically extended warranty, so out to 10 years of complete zero cost repairs, system replacement guarantee, basically all costs covered, bumper to bumper warranty for 10 years. Includes the remote monitoring, all of the software access, software updates on it, and all maintenance as well. So we include all maintenance over that 10-year period in that. And that varies from $39 to $49 a month based on the markets. Most customers do sign up for that. It's optional. So they can choose either typical, just buy the system, or that plus our monitoring, maintenance, and warranty.
Right. I mean, you make it, you install it, so you service it as well. Obviously, I think that's
Exactly. We have the end.
yeah.
And because the reason we can offer a quite competitive plan on the maintenance and servicing side is because we're confident in the initial, install. We did the work ourselves. We know it was commissioned properly. We know it was installed properly. And so that lets us be confident in offering that quite, I think, value-oriented plan over the life of the system.
Okay. So how many Jetson locations are you at now? And then I want to talk about your strategy for building out the business. Are you acquiring existing HVAC businesses? Is that how this is going to grow?
Yeah, we're today in 6 locations right now. So we're in British Columbia, 3 locations in Colorado, in New York, in Massachusetts. We're adding new locations roughly every month or so. So we've got quite a few more planned for this year. Primarily in 2026 across the US. We will open more across Canada at the right time as well, but our next 2 locations are all US based. We're headquartered here in North Vancouver primarily, and then we have a US headquarters in Colorado. Yeah, the expansion model is organic. So we have again, because our model is all about how do we make this very efficient to do, really the same process over and over. That means we centralize most of those functions. So purchasing across all locations, the obviously system design, the materials we use, which is a little different than typical in the industry where it's tend to be very regional. So even the large national suppliers often have regional differences in materials and things like that. We try and avoid all of that and really standardize it. So we have obviously a warehouse layout, a footprint. We have software systems that power that we use. Every location we enter, we come in, we acquire a site that's the right footprint for us. It gets outfit with their standard racking and materials. There's 1,500 items on that bill of materials that cover, as in the industry, all the connectors and elbows and you name it required. We hire a great experienced general manager from the local area to help manage that operation. We hire a field service manager, typically a very senior experienced HVAC technician that will be our lead there. We put them through our Jetson training programs. They come up to speed on how we operate. And then we hire local crews as well in the area there. So that's kind of our local footprint will be mostly on the install and the warehouse and operation side. And then a lot of our core functions, our back office are all centralized. So yeah, that's basically the model. It is all organic because typically our model is different enough from most local operations. There's not a lot of overlap. We have the exact same truck and van layout in every city effectively. That's all done in one location. So it's our Rivian electric vans we use, for example. They're pre-racked the same and delivered to locations ready to go. We have a kitting system, color-coded kits of every part required for the job, every tool, foam cut out to fit exactly for each part of the install. That's all designed once, and we deliver that to every location. So it's not really the situation where we'd go in and say, partner with a local operator, and we'd be able to kind of reuse what they have. because we want that standardization, which helps us achieve the efficiency and the consistency and the quality across installations, that we really need to go in with that playbook approach that lets us take what we've now spent a couple of years, perfecting in our first number of locations and essentially copy and paste that with minor differences per market, but we try and minimize those unique differences and stick to that scaled model we know works well.
I'm just curious, do you know the guys at Quilt? Because I mean, it's the only other system like this.
Yes, yeah, no, definitely know Paul, the founder there, well. I think they have a great product, and glad to see more folks innovating in HVAC. They have a great product for that, I'd say, design focused market where you're considering a mini split or multi split system. I think they have a beautiful product there, great software on it. So yeah, know them well. It's typically doesn't intersect too much with our target market. We're focused on central ducted systems, very focused around cost and value. So typically a different segment of the market. But I think, yeah, it's great to see more products like that in the market. And I think, the more we can modernize what is today some, generally legacy manufacturers kind of dominating a lot of the product available in the market, I think it's great to see more of that.
Okay. I mean, it hasn't been too long. Well, it's been a couple years now, I guess, but I'm just wondering if you found any particular pain points in the day-to-day development of of Jetson.
Where to start? I mean, that's what
Yeah,
we
okay.
we live and breathe. Every day is a new, is a new pain point, especially as we continue to scale up. Yeah, well, I mean, what haven't we found as a pain point? Just there's, anyone in this industry will know there, are challenges, in different homes. There are, slight differences. It took us a long time to really figure out the right consolidated set of materials and training to make sure we can cover all different cases really well on site. A pain point for a long time, which has taken a long time to get through, has been it's a very tight labor market, and we find specifically, I'd say in HVAC more so than electrical, there's a huge amount of inconsistency in the levels of education and training that folks, even if they've been in the industry for a long time, will necessarily come in the door with. And in different markets, it's very different. So some areas you might find that most local technicians you're generally hiring from have a pretty high level of kind of the core skills and capabilities. In some other markets, we find a lot more variance in that. And so we've had to invest a lot more, continue to invest in training programs. We have a whole team now in-house that is running that program for us. They're creating our own instructional materials and designs. We do a whole practical process now where actually new teams will be flying into one of our locations and spending an immersive couple weeks in hands-on training. And even 20 plus year experienced technicians, we want to bring them in and make sure that we train specifically on these skills for the heat pump systems and a lot of the controls and software that are involved in our systems as well, on top of some of the basics of just ensuring that, we think about flaring connections, and we use a whole ProPress system. But some of the basic kind of skills, I think we've learned we can't assume that even experienced techs necessarily have this. Instead, we try and hire great folks, but then we spend a lot of time investment in that training process as well. So that's been another, continues to be a learning process and making that better and better over time.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I don't know if you're familiar with the Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Institute of Canada, HRAI, but I mean,
Yeah.
they've identified the need for greater heat pump proficiency in Canada. They performed an analysis, skills gap in the market, and they're really trying to level up the expertise in heat pumps specifically across Canada. So, yeah, I was going to ask you how you find recruiting and finding technicians, but you just explained it, and you're really having to do it a lot on your own, it seems.
Yeah, and I think what on the recruiting side, what does help for us is that because we're very focused on this electrification angle and the climate angle, it kind of filters the folks that are really interested in joining Jetson. We tend to get, a lot of technicians that have some personal alignment with that. They want to work on sort of energy transition. They're interested in electrification. It may be a different profile than maybe someone who's more oriented a career in gas and is interested in that. We tend to get probably often on the younger side also, just because there's a lot of technology involved in our tool sets and how we operate on site. And so that tends to self-select a little bit for the folks that are attracted to the opportunities with us. But yeah, certainly I think we're going to continue to see across really all the trades, a major need for more folks coming into these trades, especially as electrification continues to increase in velocity, and there's just a ton of work to be done across these. And so I think we're going to need many more young people kind of pursuing these careers. And I think nationally, a priority's got to be really, increasing the sort of attraction and the prestige of some of these jobs because they are great, often very well-paying careers. And I think for a long time we've sort of really pushed young people to say, hey, go to a university and more of a back office or white collar job and kind of shy away. But I think now a lot of those jobs are at risk with what's happening with AI and everything else. We've got amazing careers in the trades. They're, highly rewarding, great compensation. So hopefully we can start sharing that message as we get more young people to consider these options as well.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, getting involved in the HVAC industry, did you touch base with any HVAC mentors or specialists in, like, how did you become so knowledgeable in this industry so quick?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't starting from zero. So I've been in and around construction and building for a long time, just as a hands-on, a big passion for architecture and design. I've built my last home, most of it hands-on. I've installed DIY'd many heat pump systems prior to starting Jetson over the years. So kind of had been, and my other business partners as well, similarly. So kind of came from that mechanical, electrical, engineering background, but had been in and around. My wife also runs a software business that is in the construction industry and works with the largest general contractors. So kind of been in and around construction. So it wasn't starting from zero, but we did early on. First of all, hired some great folks. So we hired our first field service manager who's still with us today in Vancouver here very early on. We went out hands-on with him and did many of our first pilot installs for customers and really, understood and grepped a lot of the challenges there. And then, yeah, we found many local folks in the industry and not necessarily, directly in residential, but in other parts of the supply chain and the industry here locally who were, very generous in sharing their thoughts and experience and, many of them poking holes in our plan. Sometimes lack of experience can be a bit of a benefit entering a new industry like this. On one side, you have some blind spots, so you don't know some of the hard things or the challenges. But on the plus side, you're not as steeped in sort of this is how things are done today, and because you don't know all the blind spots, you're more likely, I think, to just to sort of rethink with a fresh perspective, how might we do something here? And I think that's been a net benefit, I'd say, to the team is kind of bringing experience from an adjacent but different industry and not being too steeped in, well, this is just the way it works today. This is how the industry structure is set up. This is how suppliers work. This is how we operate these jobs. I think we were able to come in and sort of ask some challenging questions on that and say, well, let's think about it a different way. Why not? Why a lot of whys there and sort of balance the pulling from experience where we can and going deep, but asking a lot of first principles questions on just let's just really understand, does it have to be this way? What if it's differently? Why do these challenges exist today? And so on.
Going forward, just looking like 3 years out, how do you envision Jetson expanding or beyond ducted heat pump systems to more products or what's on the docket?
Yeah, we've got a number of new products in development right now. We're really focused around this. How do we make the whole electric home something that's an easy upgrade for homeowners? And so we think with the whole electric home, we think beyond heating and cooling. There's up heating, cooling. There's water heating, but then there's also the rest of that. So there's batteries, there's solar, there's EV charging, other elements that are all in and around how we use power and electricity in our homes today. And there's different parts of that. There's ways to combine those pieces and have really a benefit of an integrated system that can ultimately let you as a homeowner have a home that's easier to manage and service and also less costly to operate every month. And so we think a lot about how can we really connect the dots on making the homes that we're installing in as efficient as possible, and also working with the new constraints that are arising across the electricity grids in North America as we think about managing peak demand and thinking about how do we intelligently use load across the home to reduce the cost for homeowners and utilities alike, and just make these electric homes as intelligent and efficient as possible. So a lot more happening in sort of the wings and on the rest of the product line there. And certainly in HVAC, we've really picked up the bulk of it, say the residential market today, which is this retrofit of central ducted systems. We will certainly grow that portfolio a little bit over time to think about other homes we're not servicing today. But that's our immediate priority in the short term, and then bringing that to more and more markets so we can be available to homeowners across not the 6 markets we're in today, but many more over the next couple of years.
I certainly look forward to seeing more in Canada, and I expect that we will. Beyond that, I want to thank you very much for your time today, introducing me and our listeners to Jetson. Pretty exciting time.
Thanks so much for having me, Doug. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Looks like Jetson really is looking to disrupt the HVAC home services market with its kind of go it alone single source solution. I really thought it was interesting that they're looking forward to become a whole home electrification provider. I think that's something that we're going to see more of from other businesses in the Canadian market, and it makes sense for HVAC providers to step up and play a part in that solution. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would ask that you subscribe to our Business Disruptors podcast. We'll also be posting these on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/at HPACmag. The Business Disruptors podcast is an HPAC magazine production. And I'd also like to give a thank you to Jim Stubbington of Annex Business Media for post production. And I'd like to thank Peter Leonard, our publisher, for providing our theme music. That's it for this episode. Look forward to seeing you next time on Business Disruptors, an HPAC magazine production. Bye for now.